The rain hammered against the windshield as the old Greyhound bus rolled through the empty highways of northern Maine. It was nearly midnight. The road stretched endlessly through dense forests that seemed alive in the darkness. Tall pine trees lined both sides of the highway like silent watchers. Inside the bus, only 8 passengers remained. Most of them were asleep. Some stared out the windows. Others listened to music. The driver, Michael Harris, a 52-year-old veteran driver, had been working long-distance routes for over 20 years. He knew these roads better than anyone, or at least he thought he did. Michael glanced at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m., just 3 more hours until the next station. He yawned and adjusted his grip on the steering wheel. The radio suddenly crackled. Static. Then silence. Michael frowned. The radio had been working perfectly all evening. He tapped it. Nothing. A cold chill crept through the bus. The air conditioning wasn't running, yet the temperature seemed to drop. Michael rubbed his arms. Strange. Then he noticed something in the rearview mirror. A man sitting in the very last row. Michael blinked. He was sure that seat had been empty. The passenger wore a black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His face was hidden. Michael checked the mirror again. The man hadn't moved. Maybe he'd missed him during the last stop. Still. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. A few rows ahead sat Emily Carter, a 27-year-old nurse traveling home after visiting her sick mother. She had been trying to sleep, but couldn't. The cold inside the bus kept bothering her. She wrapped her jacket tighter around herself. Then she looked toward the back. The man in black caught her attention immediately. He sat perfectly still, not moving, not blinking, not even breathing. Emily stared for several seconds, then quickly looked away. A strange feeling settled in her stomach. The feeling that someone was watching her. When she glanced back, the man was staring directly at her. Emily gasped. She hadn't even seen his face move. Yet now he was looking right at her. She quickly turned forward. Her heartbeat accelerated. "Relax," she whispered. "It's just another passenger." But deep inside, she didn't believe it. 20 minutes later, the bus entered a remote stretch known as Blackwood Road. Locals hated this section. There were stories. Disappearances. Accidents. Strange lights in the forest. Most people dismissed them as legends. Michael certainly did. Until tonight. The headlights illuminated a lonely road sign. Blackwood Road next 40 miles. The moment they passed the sign, every light inside the bus flickered. Once. Twice. Then darkness. Passengers woke instantly. What happened? Did the power go out? A driver. Panic spread quickly. Michael hit several switches. Nothing. The interior lights remained dead. Only the headlights illuminated the road ahead. Then a little girl screamed. Everyone turned. A woman rushed to comfort her daughter. "What happened, honey?" The girl pointed toward the back of the bus. The man." "What man?" "The scary man." Passengers exchanged nervous looks. Emily slowly turned around. The last row was empty. The man had vanished. Her blood ran cold. She searched every seat. Nothing. No sign of him. It was as if he had never existed. The light suddenly returned. Passengers sighed with relief. Michael checked the mirror again. The last row remained empty. Good. Maybe his eyes had been playing tricks on him. The storm outside intensified. Rain poured harder. Thunder echoed across the forest. The bus continued forward. Then came the first accident. A loud bang exploded beneath the vehicle. The bus lurched violently. Passengers screamed. Michael fought the steering wheel. The vehicle skidded across wet pavement before finally stopping. Everyone sat frozen. What happened? Michael grabbed a flashlight. Stay seated. He stepped outside. Rain soaked him instantly. He moved toward the rear tire. Then froze. The tire wasn't flat. It had been shredded. As if something with enormous claws had ripped it apart. Michael stared in disbelief. That wasn't possible. No animal could do that. No object on the road could leave marks like those. Then he noticed something else. Footprints. Large footprints leading from the forest toward the bus. Michael shined his flashlight along the muddy ground. The tracks circled the vehicle. Once. Twice. 3 times. like something had been studying them, watching them. Hunting them. A branch snapped behind him. Michael spun around. His flashlight beam swept across the trees. Nothing. Only darkness. Then another sound, a whisper, barely audible. Michael, his heart nearly stopped. Someone had spoken his name. He pointed the flashlight deeper into the woods. Who's there? No answer. Just rain. Then he saw it, a tall silhouette standing between the trees, watching him, motionless. Michael's mouth went dry. The figure wore a black coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The same passenger. Michael stumbled backward. The figure remained still. Then lightning flashed. For a split second the entire forest lit up. The figure disappeared. Gone. Michael didn't wait. He sprinted back toward the bus. Passengers looked alarmed when he climbed inside. What happened? Michael hesitated. I'm changing the tire. He wasn't about to tell them what he had seen. Not yet, because he wasn't even sure himself. 40 minutes later, they were moving again. Nobody spoke much. The atmosphere inside the bus felt heavy, unnatural. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. She opened her phone. No signal. Not unusual in remote areas. But then she noticed something strange. The clock on her phone read 12:13 a.m. The bus clock showed 12:13 a.m. A passenger's wristwatch showed 12:13 a.m. Nothing unusual. Until 10 minutes passed, and every clock still showed 12:13 a.m. Emily stared. The second hand wasn't moving. Time had stopped. A chill ran down her spine. She stood. Does anyone else's clock say 12:13? Several passengers checked. Confused expressions appeared immediately. What the hell? My watch is frozen. So is mine. Panic returned. Michael checked the dashboard. 12:13. Not moving. The bus engine continued running. The wheels continued turning. But time itself seemed trapped. Then the radio crackled again. Static filled the bus. A distorted voice emerged. Double quotes. Turn back. Passengers looked around nervously. The voice continued. Double quotes. Turn back. Before he comes. Static exploded. Then silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Because every person on that bus knew something impossible was happening. And none of them understood why. 5 miles ahead, hidden deep within the forest, something waited. Something old. Something hungry. Something that had been waiting for this bus. For these passengers. For a very long time. And Blackwood Road had no intention of letting them leave. The bus continued through the darkness. Rain battered the windows. Thunder shook the sky. Inside, nobody spoke. The strained voice from the radio still echoed in everyone's mind. Turn back. Before he comes. But there was one terrifying problem. When Michael looked into the rearview mirror, the road behind them was gone. Only darkness remained. Not normal darkness. A thick black void. As if the world itself had disappeared behind the bus. Michael slammed the brakes. The bus screeched to a halt. Passengers lurched forward. What happened? Michael pointed behind them. Several passengers rushed to the windows. The moment they looked outside, their faces turned pale. Nothing. No trees. No road. No rain. Only endless blackness. It looked like reality had been erased. Emily felt her knees weaken. This isn't possible. Nobody disagreed, because everyone could see it. The world behind the bus no longer existed. Michael grabbed the emergency radio. Nothing worked. No signal. No GPS. No phone service. They were completely isolated. Then a passenger named Daniel Brooks stood up, a 34-year-old mechanic from Boston. I'm not staying here. He grabbed a flashlight. I'm walking. Michael immediately blocked him. That's a terrible idea. Daniel shook his head. Staying here is worse. Without another word, he stepped off the bus. The passengers watched through the windows. Daniel shined his flashlight around. The forest looked normal. At first, he walked several yards away, then 10 yards, then 20. The flashlight suddenly flickered. Daniel stopped. He appeared to hear something. Someone. The passengers saw him slowly turn toward the trees. A smile appeared on his face. An unnatural smile. As if he recognized somebody. Then he started walking into the forest. Emily opened the window. Daniel. No response. Daniel, come back. Still nothing. He continued walking. Deeper. Further. Until darkness swallowed him completely. Gone. Just gone. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. Nothing. No sign of Daniel. The passengers grew increasingly terrified. Then they heard it. A scream. A horrifying scream. Daniel's voice, echoing through the forest. The scream lasted nearly 30 seconds, then abruptly stopped. Silence returned. Nobody volunteered to search for him. Nobody even suggested it, because deep down, everyone knew Daniel was dead. The bus started moving again. No one wanted to stay in that place. Michael pushed the accelerator. The old engine growled. The vehicle rolled forward. Miles passed. Hours seemed to pass, yet every clock still displayed 12:13 am. Time remained frozen. Then Emily noticed something strange ahead. A road sign. The headlights illuminated it. Blackwood Road next 40 miles. Emily's stomach dropped. They had already passed that sign. Hours ago. Michael saw it. His face turned white. No, the bus passed the sign again. And again. And again. Every 20 minutes. The same sign. The same road. The same forest. They were trapped inside a loop. Suddenly an elderly passenger named Walter Green began shaking. His eyes widened. He pointed toward the rear of the bus. The man. Everyone turned. The mysterious passenger sat in the last row again, exactly where he had first appeared. Black coat. Black hat. Motionless. Watching. Waiting. Emily gathered her courage. She slowly walked toward him. Every passenger watched. Every step felt heavier than the last. The temperature dropped dramatically. Her breath became visible. Finally, she stood directly in front of him. For the first time, she saw his face, and screamed. His skin was gray. Rotting. Pieces of flesh hung from his cheeks. His eyes were completely black. No pupils. No whites. Only darkness, like empty holes leading somewhere terrible. Then he smiled, a smile far wider than any human could make. The lights exploded. Glass shattered. Passengers screamed. When the lights returned, Emily was lying unconscious in the aisle. The man had vanished again. When Emily woke up several minutes later, she was crying. What did you see? Michael asked. She struggled to breathe, then whispered, He's dead. What? That man is dead. The bus became silent. Emily continued. I saw something when he looked at me. What did you see? She hesitated. Then answered. A crash. Her voice trembled. This bus crashed 20 years ago. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. The man was a passenger. Emily continued. He died here. Everyone died here. The words hit like a hammer. Michael felt sick. Because suddenly, a memory surfaced. Years ago, he had heard about a horrific accident on Blackwood Road. A bus lost during a storm. Every passenger killed. The case was never fully explained. Michael remembered reading about it when he was younger. The accident happened on October 17, 2006. Exactly 20 years ago. Tonight. The bus suddenly slowed on its own. Michael wasn't touching the brakes. The vehicle rolled toward a bend in the road. Then everyone saw it. Headlights. Another bus. Parked ahead. Abandoned. Rust. Covered. Destroyed. Michael's single quotes s blood froze. The number painted on its side matched theirs exactly. Route for 7. The same bus. The same vehicle. Impossible. They cautiously stepped outside. Rain continued pouring. Emily approached the wreckage. Her flashlight illuminated faded lettering. Then she saw a newspaper clipping trapped beneath broken glass. October 18, 2006. Tragic bus crash claims 19 lives on Blackwood Road. Emily felt dizzy. The passenger list was attached. Below. She read the names, then stopped breathing. Every name matched the people standing beside her. Every single one. Including Michael Harris. Including Emily Carter. Everyone. Panic erupted. What is this? How is that possible? Michael grabbed the newspaper. His hands shook violently. The article stated that all victims died instantly when their bus plunged into a ravine during a storm. No survivors. None. Then Michael noticed something terrifying. The victim photograph showed him, exactly as he looked now, not older, not younger, the same, because he had never left Blackwood Road. None of them had. The mysterious passenger appeared behind the wreckage, the dead man, the first victim, the one who had been waiting. His black eyes stared at them. Then he spoke clearly for the first time. "You finally remember." Thunder exploded overhead. The forest shook. The dead passenger pointed toward the ravine. Below them lay twisted metal. Bones. Skulls. Human remains. The real graves of everyone standing there. They had been dead for 20 years. Reliving the same journey. Again. And again. And again, without knowing it. The dead passenger stepped aside. The road ends tonight. The frozen clock suddenly moved. 12 minutes, 13 seconds, and 12 milliseconds. 14, 12, 15. Time had started again. The loop was breaking. One by one, the passengers began fading, their bodies becoming transparent. Walter vanished first. Then another passenger. Then another. No screams. No pain. Just peace. At last. Emily looked at Michael. Tears filled her eyes. "We're going home." Michael nodded. For the first time in 20 years. He smiled. The storm began disappearing. The darkness faded. The forest grew quiet. And one by one, the souls of Blackwood Road finally left. The next morning, local authorities discovered something strange. Several old flowers lay beside the forgotten ravine. Fresh flowers. Though nobody had visited the site in decades. And resting among them was a newspaper clipping. The same clipping from 2006, but one sentence had changed. Instead of reading, "No survivors," it now read, "The lost souls finally found peace." No one could explain who placed it there, and no one ever solved the mystery of Blackwood Road. But locals still say that during violent storms, if you drive that highway after midnight, you might see an old bus in your rearview mirror, filled with silent passengers, traveling toward a destination that doesn't exist. And if a man in a black coat offers you a seat. Never accept it, because some roads. Never truly end. The night was unusually dark. A heavy storm rolled across the highways of rural Pennsylvania, covering the road in sheets of rain. Thunder rumbled overhead while strong winds shook the trees lining the highway. A long-distance bus carrying 12 passengers was traveling toward Pittsburgh. Behind the wheel sat Jason Miller, a 45-year-old driver known for never being late. He had driven thousands of miles over the years. Nothing on the road surprised him anymore. Or so he believed. The digital clock above the windshield displayed 11:52 p.m. Only a few passengers remained awake. Most were sleeping. Some listened to music. Others stared out the rain-covered windows. Everything seemed normal. Until Jason noticed a pair of headlights in his mirror. A black sedan. It was about 100 yards behind the bus. At first, he thought nothing of it. But after nearly 30 minutes, the car remained there. Same distance. Same speed. Never overtaking. Never falling behind. Just following. Jason frowned. That's strange. Several rows back sat Sarah Collins, a 26-year-old college student returning home after visiting friends. She couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. She glanced out the rear window. The black sedan was still there. Its headlights shone through the rain like glowing eyes. Sarah watched for several moments. Then she noticed something odd. She couldn't see the driver. Not because of the darkness. The windshield looked completely black. Almost as if nobody was inside. A chill ran down her spine. She quickly looked away. The storm intensified. Rain hammered the roof. Lightning flashed repeatedly. Jason checked the mirror again. The sedan remained behind them. Exactly the same distance. He accelerated. The bus gained speed. Moments later, the sedan matched it. Jason slowed down. The sedan slowed. His hands tightened on the wheel. Now he was certain the car was following them. At midnight, the bus stopped at a small roadside gas station. The place looked deserted. Only one flickering light illuminated the parking area. Jason parked. Several passengers stepped outside to stretch. Sarah immediately looked for the sedan. It was parked near the edge of the lot. Half hidden. In darkness. The engine appeared off. No lights. No movement. Nothing. A passenger named Ryan Cooper pointed toward it. Anyone see who's driving that thing? Nobody answered, because no one could see inside. The windows were pitch black. Jason finally decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, he approached the vehicle. Rain soaked his uniform. The closer he got, the more uneasy he felt. The sedan was old, very old. Its paint was faded. Its body rusted. The license plate looked decades old. Jason raised his flashlight. Then froze. There was no driver. No passengers. The car was completely empty. Yet the driver's seat was wet. As if someone had been sitting there moments ago. Jason stepped backward. A sudden lightning flash illuminated the parking lot. For 1 second. He saw a man standing behind a gas station. Watching him. Tall. Thin. Wearing a long black coat. Then darkness returned. The figure vanished. Jason hurried back to the bus. The passengers could tell something had frightened him. What happened? Sarah asked. Jason shook his head. Nothing. But his face said otherwise. 15 minutes later, the bus was back on the highway. The gas station disappeared behind them. Everyone relaxed slightly. Maybe it had all been coincidence. Maybe they were imagining things. Then Sarah looked through the rear window. Her blood turned cold. The black sedan was back, following them, the exact same distance as before. Impossible. It should have been left behind at the station. Yet somehow it had returned. Hours passed. The sedan never moved closer. Never moved farther away. Just followed. Patiently. Silently. Like a predator waiting for the perfect moment. Then something happened. The bus radio crackled. Static filled the cabin. A voice emerged, weak and distorted. Don't stop. Double quotes. Jason nearly slammed the brakes. The voice continued. Double quotes. Whatever happens. Double quotes. Don't stop the bus. Then silence. Every passenger had heard it. The atmosphere inside became heavy with fear. At 1:17 a.m., the road entered a dense forest region, known locally as Ashwood Valley. Residents often shared strange stories about the area. Disappearances. Phantom vehicles. Ghost sightings. Most people laughed at the legends. Tonight, nobody felt like laughing, because the sedan suddenly turned off its headlights. Yet it continued following. Somehow, they could still see its dark shape behind them, moving through the storm, keeping pace. Watching. Waiting. Then a passenger screamed. Everyone jumped. A little boy pointed toward the rear window. His face had gone pale. What is it? His mother asked. The boy trembled. The man. What man? The man is driving the car now. Every passenger turned. Lightning flashed. For one brief second, they saw him, a pale figure behind the wheel, a face that looked dead. Eyes completely black. A horrible grin stretched across his face. Then darkness swallowed the sedan once again. The boy began crying. Several passengers started praying. Others demanded Jason stop the bus, but Jason remembered the warning. Don't stop. Suddenly the engine temperature gauge dropped to 0. Then the fuel gauge. Then the speedometer. Every instrument stopped working. The lights inside the bus flickered. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then darkness. Passengers screamed. The bus continued moving, but nobody knew how, because the engine sounded dead. Yet the vehicle kept rolling forward through the storm. As if something unseen was pulling it. And behind them. The black sedan was getting closer for the first time. Closer. And closer. And closer. Until its headlights filled the entire rear window. Then, in a voice that echoed through the dark bus, every passenger heard the same whisper. I finally found you. The whisper echoed through the dark bus. I finally found you. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody even breathed. Outside, rain pounded against the windows. Behind them, The black sedan's headlights blazed like two burning eyes. Closer than ever before, Jason gripped the steering wheel. His hands trembled. The bus engine was silent, yet the vehicle continued moving through the storm. As if an invisible force was dragging it down the highway. Then the emergency lights suddenly flickered back on. Passengers looked around in panic. Sarah turned toward the rear window. The sedan was now only a few feet behind them, close enough to see the driver, and what she saw made her scream. The man behind the wheel wasn't blinking. His skin was pale gray. His eyes were completely black, and his smile stretched unnaturally wide across his face. "Jason, drive faster," someone shouted. "I'm trying." Jason yelled, but the accelerator wasn't responding. Nothing was responding. The bus no longer seemed under his control. Then the radio crackled again. Static filled the cabin. A different voice emerged. This one sounded frightened, desperate. "He's coming for the people who survived." The message cut out. Sarah froze. The people who survived. What did that mean? A few moments later, the bus rounded a sharp curve, and everyone gasped. Ahead of them stood an old police checkpoint. Abandoned. Weathered. Almost swallowed by the forest. A faded sign hung near the road. Ashwood Valley Memorial City. Jason slowed the bus. This time, the brakes worked. The vehicle rolled to a stop. For the first time in hours, the sedan also stopped. Still, sitting behind them, waiting. Watching. Jason and several passengers cautiously stepped outside. The rain had weakened. Lightning flashed overhead. Sarah noticed an old stone monument beside the checkpoint. Names were carved into its surface. Dozens of names. She moved closer. Then her heart nearly stopped. One name looked familiar. David Harper's name was written at the very top. Below it was a date. October 21st, 1998. Ryan approached her. "What is it?" Sarah pointed at the monument, then pointed toward the sedan. A rusted newspaper clipping had been attached beside the memorial. The headline read, "Local man killed in highway crash after bus collision." The article described a tragic accident. A bus had collided with a black sedan during a storm. The sedan's driver died instantly. The bus passengers survived. But one sentence stood out. Witnesses claimed the driver had been trying to force the bus off the road before the crash. Sarah's blood ran cold. She looked back toward the sedan, the dead man behind the wheel. David Harper. The same man from the article, the same man from the memorial, the same man who had been following them all night. Then something terrifying happened. The sedan's door slowly opened. Everyone froze. The dead driver stepped out. His movements were unnatural, jerky, like a broken puppet. Rain fell through parts of his body. As if he wasn't completely solid. He began walking toward the bus. Slowly. One step at a time. Passengers ran back inside. Jason slammed the door shut. The ghost continued approaching. Closer. Closer. Then he stopped directly in front of the windshield. Everyone could see him clearly now. His black eyes stared into the bus. His smile widened. And suddenly memories flooded Jason's mind. Images. Sounds. Fragments from years ago. A storm. A highway. A crash. A black sedan. Screaming. Metal twisting. Glass shattering. Jason staggered backward. He remembered. 20-8 years earlier. Jason had been a young passenger on a bus traveling through Ashwood Valley. A reckless driver in a black sedan had raced toward them during a storm. The sedan lost control. The collision killed the driver instantly. The passengers survived. Jason survived. Many of the people on this bus tonight were descendants of those survivors. Children. Relatives. Family members. And somehow, the dead driver had returned. The ghost raised a hand. The windshield cracked. A long fracture spread across the glass. Passengers screamed. Another crack appeared. Then another. The bus shook violently. It felt as though something enormous was trying to tear it apart. Sarah suddenly noticed something inside the memorial newspaper clipping. A handwritten sentence, barely visible. She read it aloud. "Return what was taken, and the road will release you." Jason looked confused. What was taken? Then Ryan remembered something. Earlier that evening, during a rest stop, he had found an old silver pocket watch lying near the highway. He pulled it from his jacket. The moment he did, The ghost's black eyes locked onto it. The pocket watch looked ancient. Its surface was scratched. Inside was engraved a name. David Harper. Everyone stared. The watch had belonged to the dead driver. Somehow it had remained lost on the highway for nearly 3 decades, and tonight, it had found its way back. The ghost slowly extended his hand, not threatening, not angry. Waiting. Ryan swallowed hard, then stepped forward. He placed the pocket watch on the dashboard. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the watch began glowing faintly. The ghost's expression changed. For the first time, the horrible smile disappeared. He looked human. Sad. Tired. Lost. Outside, the storm began fading. The wind died. The rain slowed. The cracks in the windshield stopped spreading. The ghost picked up the watch, held it against his chest, then looked toward the passengers. His black eyes slowly returned to normal. Before disappearing, he spoke only for words. "Now I can leave." A bright flash of light filled the highway. Everyone covered their eyes. When the light vanished, the ghost was gone. The sedan was gone. The storm was gone. Only silence remained. The next morning, the bus arrived safely in Pittsburgh. Police later investigated the strange memorial site. Witnesses claimed there had never been a black sedan there. No tire tracks. No evidence. Nothing. Yet one discovery puzzled investigators. Near the monument, they found a silver pocket watch resting beneath fresh flowers. The watch had stopped forever at 1:17 a.m., the exact time the haunting ended. And from that night onward, nobody ever reported seeing the black sedan on Ashwood Valley Road again. But locals still say that during violent storms, if you drive that highway after midnight, you may hear a distant engine in the darkness. And if a pair of headlights begins following you, don't look too long into the rearview mirror, because some travelers spend years trying to find their way home. A stormy night covered the highways of Montana. Heavy rain fell from the sky as a small inner-city bus traveled through a remote mountain road. Only 9 passengers were on board. Most were tired after long journeys. The driver, Ethan Walker, had been driving for nearly 6 hours. Everything seemed normal. Until the bus stopped at a lonely roadside station. The station looked abandoned. One broken light flickered above the entrance. No employees. No customers. Just silence. Ethan stepped outside for a few minutes. When he returned, the passengers were already seated. He started the engine and continued the trip. 10 minutes later, he glanced at the passenger list. Then frowned. The list showed 9 passengers, but when he counted the seats in his mirror, there were 10 people on the bus. Ethan counted again. 10. Cold feeling settled in his chest. One extra passenger sat in the last row, a man wearing an old gray suit. Nobody had seen him. Board. A passenger named Olivia Reed also noticed him. The man sat perfectly still. His eyes stared straight ahead. He never blinked. Never moved, never looked around. For almost an hour he remained frozen in the same position. Then Olivia realized something strange. Every time she looked away and looked back. The man seemed slightly closer. One row closer, then another. Yet nobody saw him move. Rain intensified. Outside, thunder shook the mountains. The bus entered a long tunnel carved through solid rock. The lights flickered for several seconds. Darkness filled the bus. When the lights returned. The mysterious passenger had vanished. The last row was empty. Passengers exchanged nervous looks. Olivia searched the bus. Nothing. No sign of him. Then a young boy screamed, "The man is beside the driver." Everyone turned. The gray-suited passenger now stood near Ethan's seat. No one had seen him walk there. His pale face looked almost lifeless. His eyes were completely white. Ethan nearly lost control of the bus. The figure slowly raised a finger, pointing ahead toward the road. Seconds later, a massive rockslide crashed onto the highway. Ethan slammed the brakes. The bus stopped only yards away from certain death. Passengers screamed. Huge boulders blocked the road. Had they continued for 2 more seconds. Everyone would have died when the passengers looked back toward the mysterious man. He was gone, completely gone. Only an empty seat remained. Then Olivia discovered something lying on the floor. An old photograph. The picture showed a bus accident from decades earlier. On the back was written, "I saved them this time." The passengers stared at the photograph. The image showed an old bus destroyed beside a mountain cliff. Date was written underneath, September 14, 1987. Ethan felt uneasy. The accident had happened on this same highway. The road crew eventually cleared part of the ROCKSLID. The bus continued moving. Nobody could stop talking about the mysterious man. Who was he? How had he known about the rock slide? And where had he disappeared? An elderly passenger named Frank Morris suddenly turned pale. "I know that face." Everyone looked at him. Frank pointed at the photograph. "That man was the driver." "What driver?" Olivia asked. "The driver who died in that crash." The bus fell silent. Frank explained. "Years ago, a bus plunged off a cliff during a storm. The driver tried to save everyone, but nobody survived. Frank had read about it in the newspapers when he was younger. The driver's name was Samuel Hayes. Olivia examined the photo closely. The man standing beside the wrecked bus was identical to the mysterious passenger. The same face, the same gray suit, the same eyes. Hours later, the storm became worse. Visibility dropped. The road ahead disappeared beneath thick fog. Then, Ethan noticed something alarming. A damaged bridge appeared ahead. Part of it had collapsed. The warning signs had blown away during the storm. At their current speed, they wouldn't stop in time. Suddenly, the gray-suited man appeared again, standing in the middle of the aisle. He pointed toward the brakes. Ethan reacted instantly. The bus skidded across the wet road. Passengers held onto their seats. The vehicle finally stopped only a few feet from the broken bridge. Another disaster avoided. The mysterious man turned toward the passengers for the first time. He smiled, not a frightening smile, a peaceful one. Then he slowly faded into the air, like mist disappearing in sunlight, gone forever. The next morning, Ethan searched online for the old accident. He found an article about Samuel Hayes. The article ended with a quote from a survivor's relative. "Samuel died trying to save strangers. He was a hero." Ethan smiled, because he knew the truth. Samuel Hayes was still protecting travelers on Highway 16, even after death, and some heroes never stopped doing their job.